Okay, I hope everyone's doing well today. Yeah, so we have a little bit to cover today. Uh, Danielle Smith and the UCP, mostly just Danielle Smith, is under fire for a quote unquote internal review that had happened. Um, which, it's hasn't been very transparent about it, despite the fact that, the NDP has been saying that they should get a third party that's not the UCP government to investigate, which is probably a good idea. And then we have some more of the Rogers Shaw merger updates, and then a whole bunch of healthcare stuff. And then New Zealand's prime minister is stepping down, so I guess let's just hop into this.
Are at the heart of an internal investigation by Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. She's called for a review into allegations one of her staff members tried to influence Crown prosecutors. CTV's Tim Brooke explains.
Danielle Smith insists she hasn't contacted Alberta's Crown prosecutors about COVID-19 related criminal
Which
charges.
is a lie.
But she can't say whether one of her staff members has. So on Saturday, the Premier promised her government will be reviewing internal emails to find out.
This is not sufficient to quell the chaos that essentially the Premier has fostered and encouraged.
The controversy stems from a CBC report that one of Smith's staffers wrote emails to prosecutors last fall. The report accuses that staffer of questioning charges brought against COVID-19 protesters in the border town of Coutts, Alberta.
And Tim, these are really serious charges. These are charges related to weapons, potential conspiracy to commit murder of police.
Plus the 200 firearms that just mysteriously went missing. Remember that as well? That's, that's also part of that as well.
Police officers.
The emails were not shared with the CBC, and CTV News has not verified them. Neither has the Premier. So she's ordered the Public Service IT department to review the emails of 400 Crown prosecutors and 34 staff. That hasn't...
This happened to be like, it was... It allegedly, only took, I think 2 days or something like that, 2-3 days, which is nothing or something like that. I don't remember how exactly long it took, but it was relatively small amount of time to actually get anything out of it. Because there was over at least 900 emails plus varying from government accounts and personal accounts and everything like that as well, that were all tangled up in this. So there's no shot that it would be done within the limited time that they actually had.
Quieted opposition calls for a full independent investigation.
We don't trust you to investigate yourself.
Political scientists agree an outside party should be involved in the review.
What if the emails were deleted, which they're not supposed to be? What if a staffer was using a personal email address as opposed to a government email address, which they're also not supposed to do?
The UCP held an emergency caucus meeting Saturday to address the allegations.
I'm sure there are caucus members, particularly those in Calgary and vulnerable seats, that are getting very worried.
The Premier's office didn't respond to requests for comments, but the results of that email review should be released in the coming...
I mean, this isn't surprising, though, because the UCP has been transparently been doing all this fucking shit within, the open. So, it's unsurprising that this would happen.
Days. Tim Brooke, CTV News, Calgary.
For 8.
So yeah, it wasn't just for like Coots protests. It was also like those who were like protesting like any sort of fucking mandates as well.
18 days in the blistering cold last winter, protesters occupied part of the highway near the Canada-US border at Coots, Alberta. They were angry about COVID-19 measures, and according to Crown prosecutors, some of those involved broke the law. 4 people were charged with conspiracy.
Some, no, a good majority of them probably broke the law. Like, there's no shot that they didn't. It's like saying like when the January 6th insurrection happened in America, it's just like, oh, you know, some of the rioters, you know, broke the law. Like, it's just idiotic.
To murder police officers, 13 with weapons offenses, and 3 people accused of organizing the protests were charged with mischief.
I've asked them to consider all charges under the lens of, is it in the public interest to pursue? And is there a reasonable likelihood of conviction?
Yes, to both of those. There is a very good likelihood to pursue, as well as, you know, there is also a very good chance of conviction.
In a series of interviews and media appearances since
like I don't understand why conservatives think that like Canada is America. Like, if you want this to be America, just go live in America. Like, it's not complicated. Like, oh, what's that? You're too fucking poor to move to America? Well, sucks to suck. Time to suck it up, I guess. Like, come on, bro.
Mid-December, Alberta's premier said she spoke to prosecutors about whether criminal cases related to COVID restrictions should proceed. Comments that set off a firestorm of criticism.
Then a clarification comes out and says, no, she never called Crown prosecutors. That would be wrong. No one would ever do that. But I did speak to the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General.
But according to reporting by CBC that Global News has not been able to independently verify, a staff member within the Premier's office sent a series of emails to the Alberta Crown Prosecution Service last fall, challenging its assessment and direction of the cases stemming from the Coots border blockades.
She certainly was sympathetic.
I mean, like, the main question is like, is this really surprising though? Like, because personally, it's not really surprising to me. Like, it was only like a matter of time before like this, you know, like this stuff surfaced and everything. Like, it's just silly to think that it wouldn't, right?
To the protesters at Coots, so it's not surprising that she and the people around her would be interested in what was happening to those prosecutions.
In a statement, the Premier's office denied any knowledge of the emails, calling the allegations serious if true, warranting appropriate action. Alberta's opposition NDP renewed calls for an independent investigation.
Failing to do so and allowing this chaos to stand will cause profound damage to the rule of law in Alberta.
An Alberta Crown Prosecution Service spokesperson says they have no recollection of receiving emails from the Premier's office. Last week, a mischief and weapons charge against one of the accused in the Coots border blockade was withdrawn by the Crown. Heather Urex West, Global News, Calgary.
I wonder why that is.
Danielle Smith became leader of her party while promising to right perceived wrongs caused by COVID restrictions. CBC News has
you want to know the funny thing about the COVID restrictions? A vast majority of the COVID restrictions that they were fighting was put in place by their own goddamn party. Like, they're so stupid. Like, hogs are so stupid, man. It's like, come on. It's unsurprising that that they're trying to go off about like fucking liberals and NDPs. It's just like, no, it was your guys' government that did that, so don't really know what to tell you.
I've been told of emails from this past fall from someone in Smith's office to the Alberta Crown Prosecution Service, challenging charges laid after anti-COVID restriction protesters blocked the Canada-US border at Coots. CBC News has not seen the emails, but several sources confirmed their contents.
It's incredibly troubling. there is an implicit abuse of power anytime there are these types of communications speaking on particular files.
It erodes our confidence that the justice system is going to treat everybody equally and fairly.
In a statement,
doesn't.
the Premier's office says Smith...
Our justice system literally doesn't. Our justice system is designed for the rich and political figureheads. Like, it's just stupid. Like, if it was like fair and equal for everyone, we wouldn't have this problem to begin with, as well as, you know, like poor people, like, I don't know, like stealing fucking, I don't know, like a can of soup, like would go to jail. It's like, what? Like these the motherfuckers that, you know, the criminal justice system works for, you know, get off scot-free.
Smith has no knowledge of the emails. This is a serious allegation. If a staff member has been in touch with the Crown prosecutor, appropriate action will be taken. Smith has publicly said she would discourage prosecutions arising from the blockade. Last week, she said she reached out to Crown prosecutors herself.
But I ask them on a regular basis.
Yeah, we already know that's a lie.
As new cases come out, is it in the public interest to pursue? And is there a reasonable likelihood of conviction? And so
the next day, she walked it back in a statement, saying she spoke only with the Attorney General, never with prosecutors. The opposition NDP and others now calling for an independent investigation.
We don't know who sent the email and to whom. We don't know the precise contents of the email.
Like, I don't think we know who sent the email and to whom, but I think via deduction, I'm pretty sure we could figure it out. Like, there's only realistically like a couple options that would make a lot of sense, right?
It needs to be investigated so that the public can truly understand the level of interference or attempts to interfere in this situation.
One political scientist says things do not look good for Smith.
Her response is that she doesn't know about this. So I think politically it does nothing to correct the notion that she doesn't seem to be fully prepared to do the job of premier.
And experts say
True.
Smith will have to tackle this.
And she hasn't really been doing a great job of premier either. She's been doing a fairly shit job, to be honest.
Head on. Time is of the essence. The provincial election is only months away. Julia Wong.
Alberta Premier.
I do honestly think that, you know, when the time comes for their next provincial election, I do think that they are going to inevitably lose to the NDP, despite how, like, corporate the NDP in Alberta is. Like, corporations are really loving the NDP right now because of how stable they are. But it's just, I don't know. I don't know, man. Oops.
Premier Danielle Smith's office is facing some serious accusations. CBC News has learned that last fall, a Smith staffer sent emails to Alberta's Crown Prosecution Service criticizing its work around last winter's protest and border blockade in Coutts. Now, to remind you, the blockade at that Alberta border crossing began at the end of January in protest of COVID-19 related restrictions and vaccine mandates. It ended in a police raid on February the 15th. Officers seized weapons, ammunition, and body armor. More than a dozen people were arrested. Cases are now working their way through the courts and range from weapons and mischief charges to conspiracy to murder offenses. The CBC's Jason Markusoff is part of our team in Calgary investigating this story. He joins us now live. Jason, take us through what we've learned so far.
So Premier Danielle Smith, when she was running to lead the United Conservative Party throughout the summer and fall of last year, had talked about granting perhaps pardons or amnesty to people who were charged with COVID-related cases, including those who were arrested in Coutts. When she got into office, in the few weeks after she was in office, somebody, we have learned from her staff, had emailed multiple times people from the Crown Prosecution Service questioning them on the case, asking them about the direction of the case, challenging them on particulars, asking for a briefing. Now, this is highly irregular. Normally, there are clear lines drawn between what politicians can do and prosecutions. They stay out of it. There's something called prosecutorial.
Yeah, but we've seen like time and time again when it comes down to like any sort of fucking squabble that conservative leaders in general or just conservatives don't like, they're willing to like tamper with evidence and shit. Like, it doesn't matter if it's like here either. Like, it's been happening like everywhere. It's been happening in like the UK, the States, like been happening everywhere.
Independence, and even Danielle Smith has acknowledged that. These revelations have been triggered a lot of calls for accountability, and I know the NDP have said this.
Now, media reports that staff in Smith's office have sent emails to prosecutors questioning their judgment and their decision to proceed with charges. Let me be clear. This UCP chaos is completely unacceptable in a democracy. The public must have confidence that prosecutions are not influenced by whether the accused have friends in the Premier's office. Premier Smith must appear in public today, identify who in her office has sent these emails, and confirm that that person has been dismissed.
Premier Smith's office says that she did not contact anyone in the prosecutor's office, and she knows of nobody who has. However, they do take this seriously. They say that anybody who is caught to have done something with emails like this will be dealt with appropriately.
So where does this story go from here?
Well,
like, the thing is like, they wouldn't just want like some like whistleblower running around like doing this, right? It's essentially what I'm getting, which is kind of surprising because, you know, generally speaking, conservatives tend to be fairly against that and everything. Like, you know, whenever there's like a whistleblower or something like that, it's like, oh, well, they're wrong and whatever, despite the fact that, you know, they're showing, you know, a lot of the horrible shit that goes on.
At this point, it's almost a day after the story came out, and we have not heard of any what happened with the hunt for these emails, whether they can find out who did this. You know, we don't. You know, it could be. And I was talking to a former chief of staff to an Alberta premier. If these were deleted, there would probably be a record somewhere. Even if they were double deleted, if they were deleted from the deleted items file, that would be tracked and is not really permitted under records laws. And if this email does exist and hasn't been deleted, there would be a copy in the prosecution's office somewhere. So there will be accountability if somebody is found, one imagines.
CBC's Jason Markusoff in Calgary. Thank you.
You're welcome.
What's this? Oh yeah, that's right. The Sovereignty Act. I forgot that she used the Sovereignty Act already. The Alberta government says a search has been found for no emails between staff and at the Premier's office and the Crown prosecutors in the wake of a report that Danielle Smith's office had pushed back against prosecutors' descriptions of cases stemming from the border blockade in Coutts, Alberta. The review undertaken over the weekend by a non-partisan Alberta Public Service searched for any emails sent or received by the relevant prosecutors and staff in the Premier's office over a 4-month period. A Government of Alberta news release stated Monday, which I'm not even like fully convinced on. Like, 4 months is a lot to go through, like, to be perfectly honest. No further review will be conducted unless additional evidence is brought forward. The review looked at nearly 1 million incoming and outgoing and deleted emails, the government said, which, yeah, that the amount of time and like effort that would have had to actually go into this, like if they were looking, is kind of like a lot, right? Like it's just silly to me that that they wouldn't or that it would take like so little time and then like suspiciously like call it off or whatever. Like 1 million is insane, and 4 months is a lot of time for that stuff. And like, who's to say like some of them haven't been deleted, right? Smith revealed Saturday that the public service would conduct a review 2 days after the CBC News published its exclusive story. She said it would cut home over 400 Crown prosecutors and 34 staff members in the Premier's office. In a Monday statement, Smith said she was confident in the integrity and professionalism of my staff. Yeah, okay. They're very professional and integral, or have a lot of integrity. And that she had full faith in the public service conducted a thorough and comprehensive review, which we know is not true. You know, it's the amount of time that like they're alleging that they went through this internal review is just silly. An independent Crown prosecution service, free from political interference, is integral to the preservation of public confidence in the justice system, Smith said. Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's totally not like there's nefarious reasons going on behind the scenes on the UCP part. We asked the media and the public to also respect their independence as they carry out their important work. Quoting unnamed sources, CBC reported that emails had been sent from staff in Smith's office that criticized the prosecutor's assessment of the charges and pushed back against the characterization of the protests. The CBC report did not reveal anything any specific details of the emails, and stated in the story it had not seen them. 4 men were charged with conspiracy to murder police officers during last year's Coutts border blockade, which was set up to protest vaccine mandates and public health measures. Other people were charged with less severe offenses. The CBC said they don't have the emails, Smith said Saturday when she announced the review. They did not provide us with names, so I have asked for our independent public service to do a review of emails. The UCP caucus meeting was held on Saturday, where the story was discussed as well. Alberta's NDP, meanwhile, has been demanding an independent investigation be launched into the allegations. Danielle Smith's internal review was a cover-up. NDP MLA Rocky Pancholi said in a statement, wouldn't you know it, the government announced today they didn't find anything. This would be laughable if the matter was so very serious. I mean, yeah, like, she's right. Like, as much as I don't like the Alberta NDP, she's right about this. Like, it's a very serious matter. Smith has asked repeatedly about recent comments, or Smith has been asked repeatedly about recent comments, which she described speaking with the Crown prosecutors about cases that are now before the courts involving COVID-19 restrictions. She since maintained that she had contacted Justice Minister Tyler Chandro and the Assistant Attorney General, but not the Crown prosecutors. Smith narrowly won the UCP leadership race after criticizing pandemic public health measures. She had said she'd look into a blanket amnesty for those charged with breaking COVID-19 rules, which is just silly. She's so dumb, man. On Saturday, Smith said she had heard many calls for forgiveness for those who were charged with violating public health measures intended to stop the spread of COVID-19. Yeah. Like, it was just so stupid, man. We have a number of public health orders that no longer exist. The people who enacted them are no longer there, Smith said. Yeah, it's because, like, we just kind of fucking, like, gave up after, like, wave 1, and we're still, like, facing some repercussions with COVID now, with the insane cases with influenza, RSV, and COVID, which, you know, Alberta has been struggling with a lot. She had struggled previously she had suggested previously that public health measures were implemented and charges were laid under political circumstances. No. That's literally not true. They were not for political circumstances. They were for public health. They were public health recommendations for an unprecedented disease that happens like once in a lifetime, if that. It is in that context that I asked the Justice Department, the Attorney General, is there a reasonable likelihood of conviction, and is it in the public interest? She said during a radio show. Bro, of course she says all of her like fucking deranged shit on like radio shows. Like, most of it just comes from fucking radio shows and like fucking press conferences. Like, I swear to God, why are conservatives so stupid and annoying? This is an appropriate thing to do. Smith said she was told to be patient and wait for the results of the ongoing cases, which, you know, she wasn't. Oh yeah, this is something I did want to touch on since we were already talking about the UCP. So some right-wing political action groups have organized or are organizing to help Danielle Smith win the next election, which is, I honestly don't think she's gonna win either way. Alberta is geared up for a provincial election this spring, but right-wing political action groups and third-party advertisers who want to see Smith and a far-right slant of candidates form government have already begun their work. Some groups are running TV ads, some post memes on Facebook, while others are organizing behind the scenes to take over the governing United Conservative Party itself in the post-Kennedy or post-Jason Kenney era. Which, yeah, Jason Kenney was already dog shit. Like, honestly, I don't even, like, the only thing that's like making the or the only thing that the UCP could do now to like become even more dog shit in general, or just like really any conservative party within Canada, is like embracing like just fascism. Like that's the only thing that's really stopping them. And like some of them already have been like embracing fascism already. Messaging from the more active groups is a mix of rhetoric about Alberta independence, conspiracies about the pandemic and vaccines, as well as shill for business interests, or shilling for business interest. Which, yeah, you know what? Businesses have been leaving Alberta, so that's cool, because, you know, Danielle Smith is an unhinged lunatic. Here are a few groups that are organizing to help Danielle Smith become premier and what they're up to ahead of the election for the spring. Take Back Alberta claims it has a membership of 30,000 and credits itself for Jason Kenney's downfall and Danielle Smith's subsequent rise to power. The group, which promotes anti-lockdown views and has ties to the 2022 convoy blockade in Coutts, Alberta, says it now has its guns set on the opposition leader, Rachel Notley. According to the group's website, TBA made a national headlines when it successfully led the fight to remove Premier Jason Kenney from power after his government imposed the harshest, most restrictive assault on freedom in our province's history. The TBA has set its sights on stopping the NDP and derailing Rachel Notley's destructive socialist agenda. Yeah, it's totally like the Alberta NDP are socialist. Like, no. As well as like, it wasn't even too restrictive. Like, we had it far worse here. Like, bro, we couldn't even buy non-essential like items at the grocery store. Like, that was so stupid. Like, I swear, like, these hogs just fucking cry over nothing. And like, when they have to do like one little thing, like, I don't know, say fucking put on a mask or some shit, they fucking whine. Oh my god, conservatives and right wingers are such fucking snowflakes. Like, Jesus Christ. But in the meantime, TBA is working behind the scenes to install friendly candidates in UCP nominations. According to the group's Telegram channel, the group recently claimed victory for taking over MLA Jason Nixon's writing association. TBA founder David Parker posted on Telegram, Nixon's entire board has been taken by Tim Hooven and his freedom fighters. Hooven previously sought to challenge Nixon for nomination in the riding, but was disqualified by the party because he followed a website platform linked to white nationalists in the U.S. Hooven is one of the group's regional captains. Yeah, that's... I'm honestly not surprised by that. Like, of course. Because, like, all these fucking hogs tend to follow, like, American conspiracy theories and, like, try and implement... or, like, and, like, American, like, white supremacists and shit. Like, they automatically think that, like, oh, yeah, we're great, you know, we should do, you know, what they're doing, we should do here. Like, it's psychotic. I swear to God, like, the biggest import that America, like, imports here is, like, brain rot. In October, the group claimed victory after electing a slate of candidates to the UCP board at the party AGM. Out of roughly 1,800 party members in attendance, TBA claims to have sent 850 to 900 of its supporters. Other regional captains include Jared McCoy, who protested at Coote's blockade. Parker says meetings over the next few months will be about outlining the plan to stop the socialists from taking power provincially and how we will be taking future steps in order to transform our school boards and municipalities. Like, that's one thing that I think like a lot more leftists need to like pay attention to is like municipalities and like local level shit, right? Like the thing is like all these hogs can get away with it because like they face like no opposition, right? TBA registered as a third-party political advertiser on February 2nd, 2022. Filings show Parker personally donating $12,749 of his own money to the organization. The organization's website is vertically identical to that of the Vancouver-based Pacific Prosperity Network, a right-wing group funded by the founder of Lululemon, Chip Wilson. They're so similar. Take Back Alberta is actually lists its Pacific Prosperity Network's phone number and email address as points of contact on their website. Neither organization responds to questions about the relationship from Press Progress. So yeah, honestly, I'm not surprised by that. There's also Alberta Proud, a group that mostly posts memes on Facebook and Instagram, has campaigned as a third-party advertiser for right-wing political causes since 2018. During 2019 provincial election, when the Facebook page was solely pro-Jason Kenney, Press Progress reported that majority of its funding came from two businessmen, Calgary's Niam Ali and Edmonton's John Mather. Like, my main question is where the fuck do all these idiots get their money from? Like, you have they're like donating like what, like $18,000 alone just to like push their own like agenda. Like, where do they get their money from? Like, honestly. Since 2019, the Facebook page became part of Canada's Strong and Free Network, a conservative organization that previously operated under the name of the Manning Center. Alberta Proud's president and spokesperson, Lindsay Wilson, was a former staffer and campaigner for the Conservative Calgary councillor and mayoral candidate Jeremy Marcus. Alberta Proud primarily runs digital campaigns on social media. During the 2021 Calgary municipality election, Alberta Proud sent $23,802.50 on Facebook advertising, claiming it generated over 1 million impressions. Bro, how the fuck do they get all this money? Like, what? Despite the Facebook page's efforts, Marcus lost the election decisively to Mayor Jolty Dundick. I hope I'm saying that right. Alberta Proud recently sponsored a talk with Farkas and far-right pundit Michael Schellenberg. Farkas later took issue with the event's promotion. Yeah, that's a little bit sus. No, I don't want to do that. Um, recent content from Alberta Proud has been aimed at attacking Ottawa elites along with anti-Trudeau, anti-Notley posts. Wilson recently joined Take Back Alberta's David Parker's Parker on his protest, where he described her as general in the meme war. I think the tables have turned. I think we're starting to see there is this globalist agenda attacking our oil sands. Wilson said, "We are supporting pro-energy, pro-resource candidates, which very clearly hasn't in the Ottawa elites, as we like to call them." What's up, Ghost? Look, I mean, I'm not really surprised by this. Alberta Proud raised $20,000 in mostly small donations in the first 3 quarters of 2022, according to Elections Alberta filing. Not much. How about yourself? And then there's the Alberta First Initiative with a war chest capable of running ads during hockey games. The Alberta First Initiative aims to shore up the UCP base by pursuing skeptics of Danielle Smith to continue supporting her. Elections Alberta filing shows the group raised $40,000 in the first 3 quarters of 2022, from just 5 donors. What? I'm currently going over the some far right groups that are trying to push to make the current premier of Alberta be re-elected again. Like, my main question is where the fuck do they get all this money from? Like, it's super fucking sus. The group received $25,000 from 2 Red Deer-based companies, Rebel Metal Fabricators Limited and Chinook Environment Services. Taxes, man. No, I honestly don't. I honestly doubt that. Like, they have. I honestly don't even know where they're getting all this money from. Like, it's not from taxes, because these are independents. Catherine Brownlee, who recently replaced Smith as chief lobbyist for Alberta Enterprise Group, donated $5,000. Previously, Brownlee worked with Stephen Allen, the head of Jason Kennedy's anti-Alberta inquiry, who she describes as a dear friend and mentor. Yikes. I mean, yeah, that very well could be the case. But, like, it's always, like, the same, like, type of people. It's just, like, they have way too much money, man. Like, it's so fucking strange. Andrew Goodakar, a Red Deer, of Red Deer, also put up $5,000, as did a number Alberta company tied to Randy Royers, a former Alberta Party leadership candidate who wrote a book about Alberta sovereignty. Yeah. So great. Let's move on. Oh, what's this? Oh, we can get to that later. Let's move on to the Roger Shaw merger updates now. There's been a little bit of updates and developments on that.
The Federal Court of Appeal has handed down its ruling on the bid by Rogers Communication to take over Shaw. After a one-day session, the court rejected an appeal by the Competition Bureau, which was seeking to block the deal. The Competition Bureau argued the transaction would lessen competition in Canada's telecom industry, which
I mean, it literally would. Like, we already have, like, what, 4? Like, including the 2 now, we have 4 major telecom companies that pretty much, like, rule everything when it comes to that department. Like, it's ridiculous. And now we're going to be, if this deal goes through, like, it's I fucking hate these companies, man.
which has some of the highest mobile prices in the world. It went to the Court of Appeal after it failed to convince the Competition Tribunal that handles merger disputes to stop the deal. The tribunal approved the deal on December 30th. Before today's ruling, the Federal Court of Appeal said it would only interfere if the tribunal committed, quote, palpable and overriding errors in its decision.
What?
Rogers hopes the merger will go through by the end of the month, which is next Wednesday.
Yeah, of course they hope it will go through. Like, they want a monopoly, man. Like, that's just how it works. Like, we're entering late stage capitalism, and they literally want, like, a monopoly on everything. Because, like, next Rogers would buy out, like, Bell MTS or TELUS. Like, it's psychotic.
Wednesday, but it still requires approval from Industry Minister François-Philippe Champagne. In a tweet posted last hour, he says he is reviewing the Court of Appeal's decision closely. He adds, quote, promoting competition and affordability in the telecom sector has been and remains my top priority.
You know what would actually solve this problem? A cheap and serviceable government option. Like a government-provided option. That would actually unironically solve this problem. Because, like, even if, hypothetically, like, they were to do this, like, even if it was, like, such a, like, shit network and everything, it would still be, like, incredibly cheap, if not free, right? So, like, it would force these companies to, like, lower their prices for that, because, like, if they see that they're losing numbers to the public option, which would, in my opinion, be like a gigantic disaster. Like, I mean, look at healthcare right now, because, you know, a lot of the government officials don't really know how to handle healthcare right now, and it's really fucking infuriating. But yeah, like, it would still cause people to, like, or cause these companies to lower their prices.
For more on this, let's bring in Michael Osborne. He's a competition lawyer with Cozen O'Connor Law Firm, and he's been tuning into the hearings all day, and we've reached him now in Oakville, Ontario. Michael, welcome to The Rundown. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Hillary.
Let's start with your reaction to the court's decision.
So it's not surprising. The tribunal found that the merger, as modified by the divestiture to Videotron, would actually be good for competition. It would provide for more competition than would be the case had the merger never happened. Now, in the face of that finding, which got a lot of deference because factual findings from a trial court like the Competition Tribunal are generally not interfered with by an appeal court, all of the very technical arguments that the commissioner advanced on appeal, they just didn't matter, because the answer to most of them was, well, the tribunal found that the transaction would actually increase competition. And so in the face of that, and the court said that's enough to dismiss the appeal, the fact that competition would increase.
So help us understand a little bit more here why, in your view, that the Bureau ultimately failed to try and persuade the court that there had been some sort of error here.
Well, I think first and foremost, because there was no legal error. The commissioner had advanced a very technical case before the tribunal as well. he said, you know what, we shouldn't look at the actual merger that the parties are going to do, shouldn't look at Rogers buying Shaw after Shaw divests Freedom to Videotron. Instead, we
Why?
should look at something that will never happen. We should look at it as though Rogers were going to buy all of Shaw.
Like, why wouldn't they do that? Like, that seems like something they should be looking into, right?
The tribunal refused to ignore reality, as it put it, and the Federal Court of Appeal refused to embark on a flight into fiction and fantasy. So the appeal essentially was founded on a bunch of technical arguments that failed in the tribunal and that failed in the Court of Appeal precisely because they were wrong. They didn't make sense. And they were also just a bunch of technicalities that were swept away and overwhelmed by the tribunal's finding on the facts that this merger would increase competition.
So what do you think happens next here then? Do you think the commissioner will appeal?
Bro, that argument is like such a like pro-capitalist one. Just like, oh yeah, no, trust me, it's going to encourage competition. Yeah, no, it doesn't. And we've seen that it doesn't. Look at the airline industry, for example. The airline industry had like gone on under like a bunch of like mergers and everything. And guess what? It didn't promote any form of competition. If anything, it like reduced competition. Because we have like what, like maybe 3 big airline companies in Canada. Like it literally didn't. It did the opposite or the opposite thing, in fact. Like the airline industry is an excellent example of that.
Appeal to the Supreme Court.
I don't think he will. He might. He would need to seek leave to appeal. That is, the Supreme Court would first have to agree to hear the appeal. I don't think that this case is one that the Supreme Court is going to want to take on. Yes, it's an interesting question, but the Federal Court of Appeal and the Tribunal have provided a very good answer to it. And I think there'd be no reason to look at that. So I think what's next is we have to, all eyes turn now to Minister Champagne. And my own view is that at this point, it's not his job to second guess what the tribunal said about the competitive impact of this transaction. The tribunal has held, after listening to witnesses for 17 days, has held that the transaction would increase competition. I don't think he has any business doing anything other than saying, right, the tribunal has made a finding, it's been upheld on appeal. Now I have to transfer the spectrum to to Videotron, with the commitments, of course, that he insisted on and that Videotron very happily gave him. So I think we will see that the spectrum will be transferred very, very soon.
And Michael, with the 30 seconds I have left here, you've been following this closely, you've been reading into all of this. What do you think? Do you think that this is going to lead, if this merger goes through, of course, to higher phone bills for Canadians?
Yes.
No.
Yes, it will. It will lead to higher phone bills for Canadians. Because right now, like I'm paying like $70, $80 without having to pay for a new phone on top of it. It will 100% lead to higher phone bills. Because less competition there is, like what the fuck are you gonna do? Like you can't really go like to company Y when company C is doing something that you don't like. Like if it's just A, B, and C, like, you know, I fucking hate the free market solution. It's so fucking shit, man. It literally does nothing. It literally does nothing to like actually solve the problem. It makes the problem worse. It is going to lead to higher phone bills. So if the merger goes through, expect your phone bills to go up.
No, I don't. The Competition Tribunal held that Freedom would be more competitive if the merger went through.
Okay, but they're wrong though. They're literally wrong. Like, again, look at the airline industry. That's an excellent example of that.
Even the commissioner's own economic expert said that Freedom's prices would go down. So the answer is obvious. Even if the other phone companies don't change their prices, if people want lower telephone bills, there's now going to be an option, Freedom, Videotron, whatever they want to call it.
Yeah, it's essentially like kudo for this. Like, come on, bro. Like, it's so stupid. No, it literally leads to less competition and higher phone bills, or just higher costs in general. Like, it is so stupid.
That will offer lower bills for people that want to pay less.
Okay, we'll have to see if that does happen, but I do think that's probably something.
Yeah, you want to know what you get for doing less? You get like fucking 20 texts and like 10 minutes of call. And like no data.
That a lot of Canadians would like to hear. Michael, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. We do appreciate it.
Yeah, just because, you know, they want to hear it, that doesn't mean that it's true, though. Like, the opposite's gonna happen. The federal court has dismissed the Competition Bureau's effort to overturn a key approval of Rogers Communications Inc.'s takeover of Shaw Communications Inc. Court of Appeal Justice David Stratus said Tuesday the Bureau's arguments don't meet the threshold of an overriding error going to the core of the case that would require to overturn the decision by the Competition Tribunal to approve the $26 billion deal. Fuck, dude. That's a lot of money. This is a high threshold. It is not enough to pull at leaves and branches and leaves from the trees, tree standing. Rather, the entire tree must fall, he said, delivering a decision from the branch before the companies involved had given their oral agreements. The Competition Tribunal, in its December 30th approval, made it clear the transaction would not likely prevent or sustainably lessen competition. It will, supported by ample evidence, said Stratus. Which, yeah, no, just because it, like, one thing says something, or like one person says something, like it doesn't mean it's gonna happen. We've seen time and time again what happens when mergers of gigantic corporations happen. Even though the Competition Tribunal erred on the narrow legal points of commissioner now rises in this court, we are not persuaded that the results could be different. Thus, it would be pointless to send this case back to the Competition Tribunal. The Competition Bureau's arguments had focused on what they said were 4 key legal errors that focused especially on how the proposed sale of Shaw's Freedom Mobile to Videotron factored into the tribunal's decision. Bureau lawyer Alexander Gay argued that the tribunal should have assessed the deal as initially proposed before the addition of the sale of Shaw's Freedom Mobile to Quebecer-owned Videotron Limited. Had the deal been assessed as a remedy to competition concerns rather than an integral part of the deal, it would have stood up, said Gray. It's almost entirely a series of service agreements between competitors that couldn't have been considered, said Gay. this is a huge error, and I think gives enough doubt to this case that really it should be sent back for that very reason. Yeah, I agree. Justice Stantra said that examining the merger alone, which wouldn't go forward without the divergence of Freedom Mobile, would give a foray into fiction and fantasy, and that the tribunal is not shackled to the earlier structure of the transaction. The deal, which Roger hopes to close by January 31st, still requires approval from Industry Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne. Champagne said in a statement that he was reviewing the Federal Court of Appeals decision and will be making a decision on the deal in due course. Promoting competition and affordability in the telecom sector has been and remains my top priority, he said. Rogers Communications and Shaw Communications and Quebecer applauded Tuesday's court ruling. Of course they would. Or appealed. Yeah, of course they would. We welcome this clear, unequivocal, and unanimous decision by the Federal Court of Appeal, they said in a joint release. Unsurprising that they would say that. We continue to work with Innovation, Science, and Economic Departments of Canada to secure the final approval needed to close the pro-competition transaction and create a strong fourth wireless carrier in Canada and a more formidable wireline competitor. Advocacy group Open Media said in a statement that the deal, as it stands, means less choice and more expensive prices. They are right on this. The deal the tribunal accepted is still terrible for ordinary Canadians, said Open Media campaign's director Matt Hatfield. He argued Champagne to block the deal, or he urged Champagne to block the deal and instead set lower rates of interest service providers to access internet infrastructure. The House of Commons Industry and Technology Committee, which previously recommended against the deal, is set to meet Wednesday to look again at the transaction. Matthew Boswell, Commissioner of Competition, said he was disappointed with the ruling. Although today's developments are discouraging, we stand by the findings of our investigation and the decision to challenge the merger. He said Tuesday night in a release, "We brought a strong, responsible case to the tribunal after conducting a thorough examination of the facts." Boswell said while they continue to disagree with the tribunal's findings, they accept the decision and will not pursue a further appeal. Why? It literally doesn't make sense. Let's move on to healthcare.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his cabinet are kicking off a 3-day cabinet retreat in Hamilton, Ontario today. The strategy session follows a week of cross-country travel in which Trudeau focused on boosting Canada's competitiveness in the clean tech sector, and it comes as many Canadians are feeling the strain of high inflation. Senior Liberals are expected to use the retreat to outline policy priorities ahead of next week's return to the House of Commons. CTV's Ottawa Bureau Chief Joyce Napier joins us now from Hamilton, Ontario with the very latest. Good morning to you, Joyce. So what's expected to be on the agenda today?
Well, good morning to you, Lois. As you can see, I'm actually at the Hamilton Airport where we expect the Transport Minister to make an announcement here. Now, this is typical of a cabinet retreat. The cabinet ministers descend upon a town and make a whole bunch of announcements. So at 9:30, we've got a first announcement by the Transport Minister to improve the airport of Hamilton. We also have an announcement by the Justice Minister on troubled youths, and the Prime Minister will be coming here later on this morning to go to a restaurant and possibly make an announcement there as well. This before the cabinet meets. They start meeting this afternoon. They're trickling in already this morning, ministers from all over the country. So what we expect is a first session this afternoon.
Bro, he's getting the beard again. Let's go. I can't wait. I want the COVID beard to come back. The COVID beard to come back.
After 5:30, the cabinet will meet. I mean, they've got a lot on the table. Affordability being, probably their top priority, along with healthcare. Now, you heard, Lois, that last week the minister said, the health minister said, we're getting close to a deal with the provinces. We know that the provinces want the federal government to increase those healthcare transfers, those health transfers to the provinces. There's been a long-standing, wrestling match between Ottawa and the provinces, but they seem to be reaching a deal now. So that also will be discussed because we're talking about billions and billions of dollars there. And, the cabinet preparing for the new session of Parliament, Parliament coming back next week, at a time when Canadians are struggling. There's inflation, cost of living issues, and the Bank of...
I mean, inflation is like, what, 6.5%? Which isn't too terribly bad. Like, where all the problems are coming from is via the price gouging from the gas companies and the grocery chains. Because like 6.5%, like, is like on the lower end, like of inflation on the global scale. Like, granted, it's still too high, don't get me wrong, but like there are places in Europe that are facing a lot more or higher inflation rates than we are.
Canada probably increasing the interest rates this week on Wednesday. So,
all of this is just artificially created by the companies.
This and more that the cabinet will be discussing for 3 days here in Hamilton.
And Joyce, meantime, the Liberals are under pressure from the NDP. The NDP caucus met last week. Let's talk about their deal with the Liberals and where that stands right now.
Well, where that stands is that Jagmeet Singh was talking tough last week at the caucus. He had his caucus in Ottawa, the NDP caucus.
Jagmeet
met
Singh.
Obviously ahead of the reopening of the parliamentary session,
auto-generated
captions. Our deal will stand, but the NDP is demanding, a pharmacare deal by the end of this year, or at least a skeleton of that deal by the end of this year. Again, we're talking, Lois, billions and billions of dollars at a time when the governor of the Bank of Canada, who's fighting inflation with the increases of the rates, is sort of...
Yeah, literally just implement like a wealth tax or like a windfall tax. Like, that's the bare minimum that we should be doing right now.
Signaling to politicians to tone down on the spending.
Oh God, he literally sounds like a fucking conservative. Like, I swear to God. Oh, tone down on the spending. Yeah, guess what? Guess where all the fucking inflation's coming from? Wealth hoarding. Like, it was pretty telling when the CEOs in the country made an entire, like, average person's living wage, or livable wage, quote unquote, in 3 days of the year. Like, it's ridiculous.
So that will be also a conversation that they will have to have. How do you manage that? How do you manage the the deal that they have in Parliament with the NDP, and at the same time cut down on government spending when we know that they will be spending billions of dollars on.
Like, I mean, honestly, who gives a shit? Like, what we need higher taxes on corporations and wealthy individuals over a certain point. If, like, I don't know, let's say anything over, like, for sake of generosity, let's say $1 billion. Yeah, if you can't survive off of $1 billion, you should not have your money. I'm sorry.
These transfers of health to the provinces. So that will be one of the challenges that they'll be facing in this 3-day retreat here in Hamilton.
All right, CTV's. A controversial report on COVID-19 is resurfacing on social media and is now in the spotlight in Alberta.
Why is it so shaky?
It was penned by former Reform Party leader Preston Manning,
Uh-oh.
who has been tasked with studying the province's pandemic response.
Uh-oh.
CTV's Austin Lee has more for us this morning. Austin, this was
Bro, what is this audio?
2022. What does it say, and why are we seeing it now?
This audio is awful,
well, Marcia,
bro.
it's resurfacing now because Preston Manning is tasked with reviewing Alberta's COVID-19 pandemic response, and he's being paid by the provincial government just over $250,000. So that's why this is coming up now, and essentially what it looks at, this fictional report, I should say, it's about a fictional inquiry into the federal government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, highlighting issues around restricting freedoms, government overreach, those sorts of things that we've been hearing about over the past couple of years. And so that's why it's resurfacing now, because this report is set to be released, expected to be released on November 15th. He's got a whole panel. The individuals included in that panel have not yet been revealed, but essentially it's coming up because people are saying, well, look, he's already written one of these fictional reports. Why is about $250,000 of taxpayer money here in Alberta going to a guy that appears to already have his mind made up when it comes to the pandemic response in what is supposed to be an impartial inquiry?
Well, what did he say in the report?
Again, the report highlighted some issues around restricting freedoms of Canadians, also giving too much power to what he called bureaucratic health experts or health authorities. The fact that the provinces seem to follow suit of the federal government when it came to the recommended measures in place. So things like that. I mean, it was a robust fictional report in this case, but again, looking at the federal government's response and essentially saying that it wasn't done properly and looking at some of the missteps or government overreaches in that case. And so now coming back to Alberta and his job here with the panel to look into Alberta's response in particular, there is some concern from political scientists in this province. One, for example, from the University of Calgary saying, well, he appears already to have an axe to grind with the measures that were in place, things like shutting down businesses, the vaccine passports, those sorts of things. He already has an axe to grind. That's what this.
Wait, what? Like, some countries won't allow you in without like being vaccinated or have a have a negative COVID-19 COVID-19 test. That's also not including the like wearing a mask in said countries. I know especially in East Asia, like they expect you to like be vaxxed up or have a negative COVID-19 test and wear a mask. Like it's like the vaccine passports, like those never really were a thing, to be perfectly honest.
Political scientist was saying. So again, why the putting him in charge of this panel and setting aside $250,000 for him to do this job when it already appears that his mind is made up here.
And Austin, has Preston Manning responded to the concern?
Not yet, Marcia. CTV News has reached out to him. Also, we've reached out to the Frontier Center for Public Policy. That is the organization that released that report online. They also did a robust interview again back in May. So we'll see if anything more comes out of this. More so just concerns over that money being allotted and him being the one spearheading this panel.
All right, Austin Lee for us. Austin.
How to fix Canada's struggling healthcare systems. That has been much of the focus of debate for.
So we've already discussed on how to fix the struggling systems or the struggling healthcare systems within Canada. I'm kind of curious to see what they're gonna say. Hopefully, I don't lose my shit like I did last time, because oh my god, I am. I am furious, man. I was furious last time. Yeah. No, essentially put, the funding that's supposed to be going to healthcare into healthcare and not having a surplus of it, investing into more hospitals, investing into nursing, and making and having a financial incentive to do nursing or other healthcare jobs. Actually listening to the those that are working on the front lines, not trying to privatize the healthcare, stuff like that.
Years. It's also the question at the heart of a new report out today, authored by some of the country's leading experts.
So let's see what they say.
Advice to both provincial and federal governments to fix systems in crisis. Dr. Jane Philpott is one of the authors of the report called Taking Back Healthcare. She is a former federal health minister and now the dean of the Faculty of Health Sciences at Queen's University. Dr. Philpott, thank you so much for speaking with us today. I'm going to ask you about the report in just a moment, but I want to start with your take on some announcements by multiple provinces in recent weeks about expanding healthcare services in private facilities. Is this route that the provinces, is this what they need to take and need to do in order to deal with the crisis in care?
No.
Well, thank you for asking, and you'll be interested in knowing that this report that came out today by the Public Policy Forum speaks very directly to that. Talks about the fact that, in a way, this public-private conversation can be a bit of a distraction, and there's a lot of myth-busting that needs to happen in that.
Yeah, technically, a lot of our healthcare industry is run by private clinics, but instead of for-profit, they focus on patient care, where the whole thing comes from is that, it's the for-profit healthcare services that are causing people to lose their shit, right? So I'm kind of curious on what she has to say.
People often don't necessarily understand the intricacies about the fact that we already have systems that are...
As well as that's not even going into the details of our two-tiered system that we have, with insurance companies, right? When you have an insurance company, or when you get a job, when you have a job, and you get benefits and everything, you'll have an insurance company, like say Red Cross or Sun Life or whoever, and they'll cover say dental or prescriptions or eyeglassware, which I think should all be free regardless, and part of the public system, but
very dependent on private delivery of care. In some cases, that's the only kind of care available for certain kinds of services. So there's already a lot of private delivery of care in the system. A couple of really important things to emphasize as the provinces are looking at this is just to always make sure that people have access to care based on their medical need and not based on their ability to pay. That's sort of the ground rule, basic, that we need to remember when we start talking about, it's not private pay for care that they're talking about private delivery of care. And the other thing that the report speaks to a little bit is the fact that You know, you can build new health facilities and they may be private delivery facilities. At the end of the day, though, our health system depends on the people in the system. So you might build new facilities, but if you don't actually have the nurses and doctors that are necessary, then you're not necessarily expanding the access to care.
The federal government is taking a sort of a step back, wait and see approach to see if perhaps what Ontario is expanding, what Alberta is expanding. We talked to the Premier of Nova Scotia. He's looking at ways to expand services offered in private facilities. Do you think that that is the right approach by the federal government to watch and see if this does?
No, I honestly don't think it is. I think that the Liberals should grow a little bit of a fucking backbone and actually do something about it. Because as we see time and time again, it's very unpopular amongst the vast majority of the population, and they don't, and the fucking premiers just don't give a shit. Like, it's idiotic. Like, they're like, yeah, I have friends that are in it for money, and, you know, I'm just gonna defund the healthcare system so that they can make money. Like, it's so infuriating.
Does lead to change, if this does create better care?
Well, the good news is that people are open to looking at all potential solutions. And this is one of the things that comes up all of the time. And so I do think that we can't put a damper on people's desire to innovate and make sure that we've actually got the best systems available. As I say, making sure that those ground rules are always kept in mind. I would say, though, that it's not where the most bang for our buck is in terms of actually improving health systems. So it's an easy place to turn our eyes. But in fact, this report that came out today talks about other things like, for example, access to primary care teams or a family doctor and an interdisciplinary team. That's where this report really recommends that the investments should be focused on making sure that people have access. Ideally, every Canadian should have access to a primary care team, just the way that every child in the country has access to public schools.
You say biggest bang for your buck. Lay it on us. Where is it? What do you think that is?
The public option.
Well, the reality is that sometimes the most effective parts of our healthcare system are not necessarily the most expensive parts. And we actually spend a fair bit on healthcare per capita, but don't necessarily get outcomes that are as good as countries that spend less than that.
Yeah, it's because we don't invest into the right situation or the right areas, as well as the premiers don't actually spend the money that they're given for healthcare on healthcare.
And so looking at things like access to primary care so that people will go to be able to see a provider. It might be their family doctor or it might be a nurse practitioner.
And like another thing that we also have to recognize is that we're the second largest landmass or second largest country by landmass. A lot of other countries have do have like a higher population or similar population, but they're also like a lot less spread out, right? So it's inherently going to be a little bit more of a struggle to give everyone access to primary care, right? With a larger area.
Or a dietitian or a social worker, if they can get that kind of care in a timely way, it might mean that they can avoid a trip to the emergency department. It might mean that they can avoid further advanced disease, a heart attack or something like that. And so making sure that we're spending smartly is going to take an enormous amount of system reform. And that's where we, who put this report together, would really like to see policymakers and politicians putting a lot of their energy.
So if that's where they're putting their energy, is there something specific they can be doing? Is this, you talk about access to care in a timely way. Is that bringing in more staff or finding ways to get more frontline staff in? What does that tangibly look like?
Well, it tangibly looks like, if you have a chance to read the report, or your viewers do, I hope they will see the call for the fact that every Canadian should have access to a primary care team, ideally within 30 minutes of where they live or work.
Well, yeah,
as
obviously.
I said, we managed to figure out how to do that for public schools. There are 6 million
But like the public school system is also like becoming more and more dog shit too, though. Like it's just a matter of time before the public education system Granted, how dog shit it is becomes under fire as well, right?
Canadians right now who don't have access to a family doctor. And imagine if we had 6 million young people that didn't have access to public school. We would not tolerate that. So why do we tolerate the lack?
Actually, we would, like, because we're quite literally doing it for healthcare. Like, it's so stupid, right?
Of access to primary care. This will require that political will, that energy amongst the federal government and all of the provincial and territorial counterparts to say, we're going to invest in these areas and it's actually going to save money for Canadians in the long run, not to mention people getting better care.
You sort of mentioned this earlier in our conversation, but you have said that there has been this collective national myth that Canada has the best healthcare system in the world. How do you want Canadians to...
True.
Do you think Canadians...
Like, we're not even the best when it comes to, like, the Western Hemisphere. Cuba has a far superior healthcare system than we do. Like, it's just the truth, right? Like, there's no shot that, you know, we don't, like, comparative to, like, say, America, yeah, sure. But, like, even by, like, European standards, our healthcare system kind of sucks.
Need to reframe how we think about healthcare.
Well, in fact, yes, we would like Canadians to do that. And, you know, I think that our complacency has been lifted, I would say, in the process of this pandemic, is that, you know, people were perhaps not aware of the fact that we have had fragile systems.
Mm-hmm.
And now that this assault of the pandemic
A lot of that has to do to the capitalist system.
Has really opened up those cracks in the system. People have realized just how fragile the systems were. What this report calls for is saying, you know what, it's the health system for the people. It belongs to us all, and we ought to really elevate our expectations of the outcomes that we should get from all orders of government working together to say, we expect to be able to have that kind of access to care. We shouldn't.
But the thing is we don't do, or like all levels of government just don't flat out work together. Because when it comes to like let's use the provincial federal example, it doesn't matter, like, you know, like even though the feds are wanting to work together to like increase quality of care and invest into, like, say, mental health and stuff like that, like it just doesn't matter because the on the province level they're not willing to actually do that.
Shouldn't have to wait weeks to get care. We shouldn't have to go to the emergency department to get care. And that's not the fault of primary care providers, but it's the way that those systems have been designed, and that there hasn't been that push, that effort to say, look, this is the expectation that Canadians should be able to get that kind of care in a timely way.
My last question to you, it's kind of a depressing question, but do you think we're at the point where the systems in this country, in terms of care, and we've seen so many examples of things not going right, and we know about wait times, we know about deaths in Nova Scotia in emergency rooms or waiting for care. We've seen the examples. Anyone who's been through the system and has dealt with it lately knows just how difficult it is. Do you think we're at rock bottom right now in terms of where our healthcare system is functioning?
No, I honestly don't think so. We can get a lot lower, and when we get to that position, we will have American-style healthcare. That is when we would have hit rock bottom. Like, yeah, right now our public system is doing a lot of dog shit, but a lot of that blame falls on the Premier's shoulders. It's not like the federal government doesn't want to give funding to the healthcare system. They do. They just need commitments from the premiers that they're going to be spending money on healthcare. Right? And as we see how the federal or the public system is being underfunded and having a surplus of unspent medical funds, yeah, of course the outcomes and the wait times are going to be shit. That's just the way that it works. You know, if you don't like invest into something and like actually make it like a priority, yeah, it's going to be awful.
It's an interesting way to frame it. I would say we're not at rock bottom. We don't ever want to get to rock bottom. We are at a low that we haven't seen for a very long.
And like the thing is that COVID exposed a lot of our problems, whether it be like in the medical industry or when it came down to like the housing market, you know, or whatever. Like COVID and post-COVID has been showing us it's been showing us a lot of problems within our systems that we could easily fix. We could do it tomorrow, but the Liberals don't have a backbone, and a lot of the conservative premiers or just conservative leaders in general are doing whatever the fuck they want.
Time in terms of those kinds of experiences.
Because like allegedly, like, you know, how they're supposed to be like the party of the worker or whatever the fuck they want to go by. They just flat out don't give a shit about public opinion.
It's time to climb out of that low, to expect more from our systems, to make sure that they are highly functional and that everybody works together, that our health workforce gets the support that they need, and that we design systems so that Canadians will be able to get on with their lives. Health is incredibly important to the success of our economy, but also, of course, to people's well-being. And it's never been more important than now to fix what's broken.
Dr. Philpott,
She's right.
Thank you for your time.
She's right.
Thanks for having me.
We are well into flu season, and with that comes a lot of us trying to figure out how to stay healthy and how to be proactive about it. According to Stats Canada, nearly half of Canadians have been leaning on health supplements for the express purpose of boosting their immune systems.
I do think that, like, I think a lot of this is just like placebo shit. And I think when it comes to like the supplement industry, like we should be like, it's very unregulated. Like allegedly, I don't know if this is true or not, but like allegedly, like say vitamins, for example, could have stuff like sawdust. I don't know if I believe that or not, but like that's just some stuff that I've heard. Again, I don't know if that's true or not. It's something that we could probably look to more deeply on the broadcast at some point. But we should be regulating supplements better than what we are, because we currently have like almost nothing for supplement or regulatory actions or standards for supplements.
So, can you boost your immune system using vitamins and supplements? Tim Caulfield is the Canada Research Chair in Health Law and Policy at the University of Alberta. He is well known for fact-checking health claims. Tim, please don't burst my bubble about vitamins. Can they amp up our immune systems?
Well, first, let's just start with the idea of immune boosting. You know, it's kind of a
and like, yeah, it's like kind of a myth, right? Like the best way to do so is by like, you know, exercising, eating properly, you know, going outside, you know, stuff like that, right? When it comes down to like boosting it through supplements or vitamins or whatever, like that's been pushed for so long. It's like the whole like essential oils shit, right? It's just like, oh, if you take these essential oils, your immune system will be better. Which no, that's not how that works.
myth, and it's not a really constructive idea. You know, your immune system's not a muscle. You know, can't make it super strong. You want a healthy immune system. You want to maintain your immune system, but you really can't boost it. And in fact, during the pandemic, some regulators around the world came down on entities that were marketing immune boosting products. So,
like, remember when they said that, you know, drinking bleach was gonna cure you of like COVID or like boost your immune system or shit? And then we had like the whole like horse dewormer paste saga as well, or hydroxychloroquine. Like, they were all doing the exact same shit, and it's the equivalence of or it was like at the time it was the modern day equivalence of like essential oils and shit, right?
That terminology in itself can be really problematic.
Okay, I hear you. I think my ears are wide open, but I still have lots of questions. There are, there's endless information out there, particularly.
Like, there are ways to like sort of make your system better. Again, it comes from eating better, like exercising and all that. Like, that's generally like the best thing to do, but like there is still some caveats to that as well, though.
Particularly, this time of year in social media about this, suggesting it can work and how to do it.
What?
The stuff is everywhere. Have a look at this.
Orange peels contain more vitamin C than the actual orange, so I use them to make this tea that totally boosts your immune system. I'm gonna add like 3 cinnamon sticks because they're super antibacterial. Now you can refuse to get sick this year.
Bro, this like isn't even fucking true. Like, this just doesn't happen.
You're like me, and you won't ruin your holiday.
Okay, so firstly, it sounds delicious.
Like, making a tea and everything like that, sure, fine, whatever. But like, making those claims is just like ridiculous, right?
Delicious. I mean, I gotta be honest. It sounds like it might make sense, does it?
Yeah, it sounds great from an eating perspective, but are you going to boost your immune system? No. And by the way, you don't want to boost your immune system. That's anaphylaxis, right? That's an autoimmune disease.
Yeah.
There is really no magic to this sort of superfood idea around boosting your immune system. You do want to eat a healthy diet, and there is evidence about how a healthy lifestyle can help you maintain your immune system.
Pre-watched. Fucking pre-watched. I literally called it. Like, yeah, like having a healthier lifestyle and eating properly will make you feel better and less prone to disease.
And you don't want to be deficient in your vitamins, right? Low vitamin C leads to scurvy, but you can't sort of take extra vitamins in order to ward off these.
Yeah, you want to know what happens when you consume more or consume other or more vitamins than what you're supposed to? You literally just pee it out.
Ailments, and that's really what's being marketed here. And the other really important thing to highlight is how definitive the language is. They're not saying, maybe it's going to help, or you might want to consider this and you'll get this marginal benefit. No, they're saying you're not going to get sick this season if you adopt these approaches, and that's misleading.
Yep.
But just to poke at that a little bit, if you're feeling run down and you're afraid to get sick, it feels like such an impulse to say, okay, I'm just going to jack up the vitamin C, maybe throw in a little something else in there so that I can ward it off. It feels like an innate response. Are we just all wrong?
You're right. There's a real intuitive appeal to that. We all know that we need vitamins. And it plays to what I call the more is better myth, right? We have to have the right amount of vitamins in our body. So maybe if I have more of that good substance, I'm going to be even stronger. And that's just not the case.
He's right.
So look, there have been big clinical trials. There have been systematic reviews on the relationship between vitamin C and fighting colds and flu. And the data is really underwhelming. There was a systematic review by the Cochrane collaboration that found no benefit. There's been other studies that have found really modest, maybe perhaps prophylactic, preventative benefit, but we're talking underwhelming conclusions here. There really is no magic.
All right, let's look at another very popular promise we found.
It's called echinacea. It's awesome. It helps you relieve your cold symptoms.
Oh, I remember fucking echinacea, bro. My family was so fucking on that, like, back in the day. Like, they bought into that fucking propaganda and shit. Oh my god. Or the misleading.
Ill in the long run. It also helps fight inflammation. It aids in your body's natural immune response. This basically means that it helps stimulate your immune system.
Echinacea. I mean, people have been using this forever. Stimulate your immune system. Is she right?
Some studies, again, find very, very modest potential prophylactic benefit. Other systematic reviews have found no benefit. So once again, I'm going to use that phrase, no magic associated with echinacea. And I think it's one of those things, if it worked well.
Like, the thing is that, like, everyone wants to have, like, a magic little potion that will cure them of, like, all ailment or disease and whatever. But realistically, that's not gonna happen. Like, even if you believe in, like, these miracle cures and everything, you're still gonna get sick. Like, it's just silly. Like, no, you're still just gonna get sick and everything. Like, come on. There's nothing like that currently exists.
Well, there have been enough studies. We'd know.
So some people, just to take this a little bit further, some are so very serious about this. We're increasingly seeing people talking about injecting them. So
what?
As with this person, have a look.
I don't know if I'm able to show this. I don't know if I'm able to show this.
Hit it. Show them, girl. Yeah. Boom, bow.
Okay, a lot of promises.
I don't know if I was able to show that.
The immune system, improving metabolism, et cetera. These treatments cost hundreds of dollars sometimes per treatment. Do the injection?
I mean, again, it just reminds me a lot of the essential oils and, like, natural remedies industry. Like, they'll sell you on, like, one idea and then they'll make a shit ton of money off of it. That's essentially what I'm getting out of this.
Meet any of the promises?
Nope. And this one's easier, I think. I can be a little bit more definitive. I've actually tried this for some, documentary project I was on. I've tried it in a couple places, and sometimes the promises are really clinical, and other times they're more lifestyle promises. But there's really no evidence to suggest any of those things have been supported. And so if you see that kind of stuff advertised, especially around vast quantities of vitamins, be very, very skeptical.
How regulated or safe is this industry of health food supplements?
It's not very regulated, and how safe it is, it's up in the air. Like I had mentioned earlier, allegedly, some of them put, like, sawdust and stuff in it. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's just some stuff that I've heard. But there's a bunch of, generally speaking, there tends to be, like, a lot of filler in it.
Look, it's a huge industry, multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's lightly regulated. And there have been studies that have suggested that it needs to be regulated more. I support that. I think we need better evidence for the claims that are associated with this industry. So remember that. Remember that it's not regulated as tightly as, say, pharmaceuticals. And also remember, studies have told us that often these products can be contaminated, and they don't even contain what's on the label. So, yeah, caution is, I think, the best way forward, and a healthy lifestyle.
All right.
All right. Let's take a look at this on how bilateral health accords could help improve staffing shortages. The Prime Minister stated on January 16th that there was a positive step forward towards breaking the long-standing impasse in the debate over healthcare financing should come as welcome news to Canadians. In particular, both the PM and some premiers seem intent on moving away from the traditional federal, provincial, territorial debate over whether new federal investments in healthcare should come with some conditions or strings, rather than talk was of shape priorities. With a healthcare system increasingly admitted to being in a crisis, and a resonant debate over private delivery, a possibility or a possible private payment for some services. This is positive news in a policy area in desperate need of some. Indeed, the provinces and the federal government already know how to recast the debate over strings and conditions because they have done it before, first with the 2017 healthcare arguments, and then again in intergovernmental health childcare funding agreements signed in the past couple of years. In 2017, the federal, provincial, and territorial governments signed an umbrella statement of principles making the substantive reform of mental health and community-based care key priorities in Canada's health system. The federal government then signed individual bilateral agreements with each country or each province and territory, indicating with varying degrees of specificity how they would spend their share of an additional $11.5 billion in health spending to achieve those goals. Unfortunately, the global COVID-19 pandemic knocked the healthcare system across the systems across the world for a loop, derailing reform efforts and focusing our attention elsewhere. But a once-in-a-century calamity should not be taken as an indication that the model was necessarily faulty at its core. This approach to intergovernmental diplomacy had the advantage of recognizing that the provinces were in different places in terms of how they designated and delivered services. As the president of the Canadian Medical Association, Dr. Aleka Leferine, recently argued the system is highly fractured, operates on soleos, and lacks conditions or coordination. As we know from the relative failure of 2004 Health Accord, the so-called fix for a generation, simply agreeing to transfer large sums of money to furtherance for real change has not worked. The current provincial demand for a $28 billion unconditional increase in the Canadian health transfer would do little to solve the system's problems. I've mentioned this before. That is 100% true. A lot of it has to come down to actually like investing into the healthcare system and investing into the people that work on the front lines. There is good reason to believe that putting that amount of cash into the system without clear and specific goals about what one wants to achieve might only make the situation worse. It is easy to see billions of dollars wasted as provincial and territorial governments compete against each other for scarce health human resources, succeeding only bidding up the price of healthcare workers. But if the governments start with shared priorities, say, for example, a coordinational approach to health human resource planning and the management of waiting times and the expansion of primary care teams, and then set about outlining how each government will use their share of any new funds to further these goals, then there could be some optimism about affecting real change to those services. The beauty of the bilateral model is that it avoids the question of federal strings by allowing provinces to commit to how they will move their services in the direction of shared goals. In other words, the provinces set conditions themselves, tailored to reflect the particular solution of each province and territory. The sticking point will be how we access whether changes happening. This would require the province and territories to agree to provide clear and transparent reporting their residents about how money was spent, something that is sadly missing from the 2017 bilateral agreements. In December, Nova Scotia Premier Tim Hudson indicated a willingness to make such a commitment, and Ontario's Doug Ford and Quebec's Francois Legault made similar pledges. Already's kind of sus. As of yet, no one knows whether what Canadians will see will be another grand bargain like in 2004, or whether the bilateral deals of 2017 will be transplanted, will be the template. But as is often the case in intergovernmental diplomacy, we may look like the last minute deal went down to the wire was in fact a result of far more behind the scenes negotiating than we know at the time. Regardless, we must come out of the deal substantive and measurable change. Bilateral agreements around a shared plan may be the best way to get there. Otherwise, Canada's healthcare system may never recover. So Alberta's health redirects thousands of surgeries to independent clinics to tackle their backlog. Alberta Health says it is willing to contract out thousands of orthopedic surgeries to chartered surgical facilities in Calgary. Health Minister Jason Coping says more than 3,000 publicly funded hip and knee surgeries will be done at Canadian Surgery Solutions, an independent healthcare facility. He says that's in addition to the surgeries already being done in Calgary hospitals. Albertans, many of whom are in pain, are waiting too long for life-changing knee and hip surgeries in Calgary, Coping said. Our healthcare action plan will accelerate adding more surgeries both at hospitals across Alberta and at chartering surgical facilities, and bringing down wait times to the waiting period recommended by medical experts. The province said that there are about 6,000 people in Calgary waiting for orthopedic surgeries. More than half of them are waiting longer than the clinically appropriate time for knee and hip replacements. The contract announced on Monday will increase orthopedic procedures performed in the Calgary area by 21% compared with 2021 to 2022, Alberta Health said in a statement. The opposition NDP says the United Conservative government's plan to expand surgical privatization. Yeah, they're right. This wouldn't be a problem if they actually had invested into their healthcare staff and their system, but I digress. David Shepherd, health critic for NDP, says it will be doing lasting harm to Alberta's public health care system and ultimately lead to more out-of-pocket costs for Albertans. He says it also takes staff and resources away from the public system, which is already experiencing a staffing shortage, which is true. Coping disagreed by saying they are contracting additional resources to build up the system. This is no different than going to see your family doctor, he said. It's paid through our healthcare system, and it's a private corporation, which is a lie. You're going to be paying out of pocket for this. Don't fall for it. The government said several actions are underway to boost surgical capacity at hospitals, including extending main operating room surgical suite hours. They also are adding new operating rooms to hospitals across the province, including Calgary, Edmonton, Edson, Grand Prairie, Lethbridge, Medicine Hat, and Rocky Mountain House. Moving more orthopedic surgeries and procedures into chartered surgical facilities will free up operating room spaces in hospitals to provide more complex surgeries, the government said. And finally, there was nothing here. Okay. Let's move on to New Zealand's Prime Minister stepping down.
A world leader surprise announcement is shining a spotlight on the sacrifices of holding public office. New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern redefined modern leadership. CTV's Genevieve Beauchemin on her resignation and its resonance.
See you later on. This is New Zealand's Jacinda Ardern on Election Day in 2017, painting her fence hours before she became the world's youngest leader.
I am human. Politicians are human.
Now this trailblazer, months away from a fall election, is leaving office on her own terms.
I know what this job takes, and I know that I no longer have enough in the tank to do it justice.
Her words have thrown a spotlight onto the pressures of leadership and the workforce, with global surveys showing women report stress and burnout at an alarming rate.
So it's really brave and important to recognize that people can burn out.
Ardern is viewed as a rock star on the global scene, though polls show her popularity at home has plummeted.
You're not going to put it all on me, are you?
Still, she's a rare world leader, handing over the reins of power before her term ends.
It's not discouraging at all. I think it's empowering that she decided she chose her time limit, and she chose when she was going to call her shot and leave.
Ardern was only the second world leader to give birth while in office and brought her baby to the UN General Assembly.
Our gun laws will change.
When a shooter killed 51 people at 2 Christchurch mosques, she earned praise for her empathy and for quickly tightening gun laws. She brought in among the world's toughest pandemic measures.
Compare that to say what we do here, or restricting American gun, or America restricting its gun laws. Honestly, I think she didn't do too bad of a job.
And that led her to re-election in 2020. But she's since faced backlash over the strict policies, and critics say she's fallen short.
Yeah, but it was only a handful of hogs that lived in New Zealand. Outside of that, she was supported throughout the pandemic because she actually let the medical professionals deal with the pandemic rather than politicians.
Of the transformative leadership she promised. Ardern now says she'll walk her daughter to school and that she'll marry her longtime partner. But she's also opened a conversation about when it's time to walk away from what she says is a very rewarding but stressful job. Genevieve Beauchemin, CTV News, Montreal.
Yeah.
A world leader surprise announcement is shining a spotlight on the sacrifices of holding public office. New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern redefined modern leadership. CTV's Genevieve Beauchemin on her resignation and its resonance.
See you later on. This is New Zealand's Jacinda Ardern.
Oh, I think we just watched this. Yeah, so Chris Hipkins is sworn in as New Zealand's new Prime Minister. I don't really know too much about him.
gives effect to your appointment as Prime Minister. Congratulations, Prime Minister Hipkins.
Your Excellency, that completes today's appointments.
Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, my warmest congratulations to you both.
This is the biggest privilege and responsibility of my life. I'm energised and excited by the challenges that lie ahead. The Deputy Prime Minister and I both take today's appointments very seriously. As Prime Minister, I acknowledge the important nature of my role in advising the Sovereign and the Governor-General.
The Right Honourable Chris Hipkins, I very much look forward to working with you. I have come to both cherish and appreciate the importance of the relationship between the Prime Minister and the Governor-General, a relationship integral to New Zealand's constitutional arrangements.
Prime Minister, congratulations on your well-deserved appointment. Thank you for the trust that you have placed in me. Thank you for honouring me, my family, and our Pacific community through this appointment. I look forward to working with you and supporting you in this very important role.
Okay, so yeah, they now have a new PM. Hipkins.
Kia ora koutou, everybody. Today I can confirm that I have put my name forward to be the next leader of the New Zealand Labour Party and therefore the next Prime Minister of New Zealand. I can also confirm that as the time nominations closed at 9 o'clock this morning, I was the only nominee for that role.
Really?
Look, it's a big day for a boy from the hut, and look, I'm really honoured and humbled by the support that my colleagues have shown towards me. It's an enormous privilege. It's also an enormous responsibility, and the weight of that responsibility is still sinking in. But I absolutely take that very seriously, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to the job. I'm feeling energised and enthusiastic, and I'm looking forward to getting into the work. So I do want to thank the people of New Zealand as well for their patience during this process. I acknowledge that the resignation of a Prime Minister is a big thing. Look, I've thoroughly enjoyed being a minister in Jacinda Ardern's government. I think the New Zealand public have seen the work that I have done. I've, dealt with some challenging situations over the last 5.5 years, the last couple of years particularly. And I'm a human being. I'll make the odd mistake from time to time. I try and own the mistakes that I make. I don't pretend to be someone that I'm not. I've never done that in the past, and I don't intend to start doing that now.
Oh, it is Chris Hipkins. I didn't realise that. Oh, I'm pleased with that. I think, there are other contenders, but I think it's important that we have someone that appeals to Middle New Zealand. I am a Māori, and I wouldn't have minded seeing the, maybe Māori or Pacific, but I think if Labour is smart, it would go for the middleman who will appeal to the broader public in order to get back in, and I think Hipkins is pretty solid.
Well, no, he definitely has big shoes to fill. He won't ever fill the shoes that Jacinda has, and it'll be interesting to see what Labour come out with in terms of the election campaign over the next year, and we're looking forward forward to seeing what happens.
To have someone up against Nash was essential. Someone with credibility, someone who has the support of the Labour caucus, but foremost has been there through the highs and lows of the pandemic and before that. So very good news for the economy.
Thanks, everybody.
This summer,
This was her announcement, stepping down as prime minister.
find a way to prepare not just for another year, but another term, because that is what this year requires. I have not been able to do that. And so today I'm announcing that I will not be seeking re-election, and that my term as Prime Minister will conclude no later than the 7th of February. This has been the most fulfilling 5.5 years of my life, but it has also had its challenges. I know what this job takes, and I know that I no longer have enough in the tank to do it justice. It's that simple. I know there will be much discussion in the aftermath of this decision as to what the so-called real reason was. I can tell you that what I'm sharing today is it. The only interesting angle that you will find is that after going on 6 years of some big challenges, I am human. Politicians are human. We give all that we can for as long as we can, and then it's time. And for me, it's time. I think the cumulative challenges that we've faced as a team, and they have been extraordinary, has taken its toll. I consider this job a privilege, but I am also human, and so my reflection has been an entirely personal one. And I will add that I had the support of my family to continue.
All right. New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, whose empathetic handling of the nation's worst mass shooting and health-driven response to the coronavirus pandemic led her to become an international icon, but who faced mounting criticism at home. On Thursday, she was leaving office. Said Thursday she was leaving office. Fighting back tears, Ardern told reporters that in Napri that February 7th would be her last day as Prime Minister. I am entering now my 6th year in office, and for each of those years I have given my absolute all, she said. She also announced that New Zealand's next general election would be held on October 14th, and that she would remain a lawmaker until then. Her announcement came as a shock to people who thought the nation of 5 million people. Although there had been some chatter in political circles about Ardern might resign before the next election, she always firmly said she planned to run again. It's unclear who will take the position of Prime Minister until the next election. Deputy Minister Garrett Robinson announced he wouldn't be contesting for the leadership of the Labour Party, throwing the competition open. Ardern became an inspirational woman around the world after winning the top job in 2017 at the relatively young age of 37. The following year, she became just the second world leader to give birth in office when she brought her infant daughter to the floor of the UN General Assembly in New York in 2018. She brought smiles everywhere. In March 2019, Ardern faced one of the darkest days in New Zealand's history when a white supremacist gunman stormed two mosques and Christchurch and slaughtered 51 people. She was widely praised for her way she embraced the survivors and New Zealand's Muslim community in the aftermath. She was lauded globally to her country's initial handling of the coronavirus pandemic after New Zealand managed to stop the virus at its borders for months, but its zero-tolerance strategy was abandoned once it was challenged by new variants and vaccines became available. But Ardern faced growing anger at home from those who opposed coronavirus mandates and rules. A protest last year began on Parliament's grounds, lasting for more than 3 weeks and ended with protesters hurling rocks at police and setting fires to tents and mattresses as they were forced to leave. Bro, every hog is the same, I swear to God. The heated emotions around the coronavirus debate led to a level of vitriol directed at Ardern that was rarely seen by former New Zealand leaders. This year, Ardern was forced to cancel an annual barbecue she hosts due to security fears. Ardern had been facing tough election prospects. Her Labour Party won re-election 2 years ago in a landslide historic proposition, but recent polls have her party behind its conservative rivals. Ardern described her job as among one of the most privileged but challenging, and said doing it acquired having a reserved reverse to face the unexpected, and she said she no longer had that reserve to serve another term. She called her time in office fulfilling but challenging, but I am not leaving because it is hard. Had that been the case, I probably would have departed 2 months into the job. I am leaving because with such a privileged role comes responsibility. The responsibility to know when you are the right person to lead, and also when you are not. I know what this job takes, and I know that I no longer have enough in the tank to do that justice. It's that simple, she said. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, whose Labour Party is aligned with New Zealand's ruling party, said Ardern, has shown the world how to lead with intellect and strength. She had demonstrated that empathy and insight are powerful leadership qualities, he tweeted. Judinsa has been a fierce advocate for New Zealand, an inspiration to many, and a great friend to me. With China becoming more assertive in the Pacific, Ardern had tried to take more diplomatic approach to the neighboring Australia, which had ended up feuding with China. In an interview with the Associated Press last month, she said that building relationships with small Pacific nations shouldn't become a game of upmanship with China. Ardern in December announced the Royal Commission of Inquiry would look into whether the government made the right decision in battling COVID-19 and how it can better prepare for future pandemics. This report is due next year. The Labour Party caucus will vote on the new leadership, who we already know, and we already know about that stuff. So I guess let's go to here.
To asking the Supreme Court on Air France on the preemptive use of the notwithstanding clause, and are you closer to ask Minister Lametti to go ahead on this?
I've been crystal clear on this for many, many years. I do not think any provinces should be proactively, preemptively using the notwithstanding clause.
He's
What
right.
they're doing is suspending fundamental rights and freedoms and preventing the courts from even being able to weigh in on that. As a government, we will always stand up for people's fundamental rights and freedoms. We've committed that we are going to engage at the Supreme Court in the current case on on Bill 21, and we're going to continue to look at the best ways to make sure that right across the country, every Canadian has their fundamental rights and freedoms protected.
He's right. Okay, so Louisiana abortion clinics are to relocate outside of the state.
This week marks the 50th anniversary of the landmark Roe versus Wade
Yeah, but like it got overturned by a vast majority of Republican states, though.
decision, which made access to abortion a constitutional right in the United States. Across the U.S., demonstrators rallied for abortion rights after the Supreme Court overturned that decision last summer. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris delivered these remarks in Florida.
Americans of every background, in every community, have voiced their perspective. In essence, they said, one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree that the government should not be telling people what to do with their own bodies.
Since last year's startling reversal from the conservative-dominated bench, abortion has been banned or severely restricted in 14 states.
Yep.
Louisiana is one of them. Kathleen Pittman is an administrator of the Hope Medical Group for
And it's
Women, which
all
until last summer
it's
was
all
one
Republican
of the last
states.
abortion clinics in the state of Louisiana. Ms. Pittman, thank you so much for speaking with us. I'd like to start by asking you about how the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe versus Wade has affected your community.
Well, obviously, it's decimated abortion care, not just in North Louisiana, but through the state and most of the South, actually. So we are still, while we are not able to see patients for abortion care, we are manning our phones and trying to direct them to care as best we can. It's been difficult, to say the least. The ruling came down in the end of June of last year. We were able to keep our doors open for another month as we challenged it through the courts, but ultimately, by the end of July, we did have to stop providing care.
Before we get further into what's going on in Shreveport in northern Louisiana, I'm wondering, this is supposed to be the 50th anniversary of that landmark court decision. When you take a step back and you think about this moment in America, how do you feel?
Well, yesterday I spent time with my family and basically ignored the anniversary. I mean, what can I say? I had nothing to celebrate as far as I'm concerned. So I hung out with my family, watched a little football, and tried not to dwell on it. We compartmentalize our lives as best we can when dealing with difficult situations. So I decided yesterday was my day to step away.
Do you have any expectation that things will change, whether it's through legislation or there will be any sort of major change that will once again make...
I don't think if it hasn't happened yet, I don't think there will be, right? The only way to do so again would literally be by mass protest in order to force the government's hand. Because, like, they didn't even codify it. Like, they made a big stink about it. Like, the Democrats made a big stink about it during... like the midterms, but it literally didn't even matter.
Get a right for those seeking an abortion to get access to an abortion no matter what state they live in?
Not in the near future. I don't. This has been, a long time coming. A few years ago, had someone told me that we would be in danger of Roe being overturned, my general response was and would be, because abortion laws in each state have crept up and created so many problems, so many restrictions through the years, it wasn't so much Roe being reversed as it was just everything being, our rights being whittled away. And of course, now
She's
here we
right.
stand.
She's right.
So I don't anticipate anything changing in the near future, no.
So
she's 100% right about that. Again, you know, if there was to be something done about it, it would have already happened. But as we've seen time and time again, the Democrats don't really give a shit about people. They're like, their essential thing is just like, oh, we're not as bad as the Republicans, just vote for us.
Clinic had to shut down. Are you still getting phone calls from people in the community that are seeking help?
Absolutely.
Not just in the community, but all across the South. We're getting calls from Mississippi, Texas, Arkansas, and of course throughout Louisiana. Some totally unaware of the fact that abortion is now illegal. Some begging for help to get somewhere. We're manning the phones, trying to help direct patients. If all we can do is provide a link to where they can log in online and find the clinic nearest them, that's something. It's really all we can do at this point. Now, as far as the clinic's concerned, we have tried to continue running pregnancy tests and providing ultrasounds basically for free, just to help women determine how far along they are, and some of them not necessarily even sick.
Granted, it's not as great as providing those services, but providing the service of abortion, but that's still like a good thing that they're doing, right?
Seeking abortion care, but looking for prenatal care. And of course, if a woman's going to continue the pregnancy, she needs care as quickly as possible.
True.
So we've done what we can. We're in the process of relocating out of state. So a lot of our time now is spent trying to line that up.
Who is this affecting the most in Shreveport in northern Louisiana? But
poor people and people of color and other marginalized groups.
As you mentioned, you serve other states as well, because you are in that sort of pocket where Texas is close by. There are other people coming from out of state. So when you look at this and what you're seeing in your community, in the area you serve, who is this affecting the most?
The marginalized communities are being affected the most, as always, and that's the way it's always been. The primary reason given for terminating a pregnancy has always been financial instability. And so these are
Here's number two.
People that cannot afford to travel. They're literally stuck in a cycle of poverty. And this is only going to create more problems for them. Louisiana has one of the highest, if not the highest, maternal mortality rate in the United States. And this is not going to help that any. We're going to see more women continuing pregnancies that they physically and medically should not be continuing.
One of the things that advocates who are against abortion, some have argued that, if this were to be the case and things were changed, so like we've seen that, they would be willing to work with organizations that provide additional support to women to help bring these babies into the world and help give them the first support to get a good head start in life. Are you seeing any new bills, any new organizations, anything new that will help the people who are in this position now that this option is not available to them?
I mean, maybe some third-party organizations, but bills I don't see happening.
I have seen nothing. It will be interesting to see what the new legislative session brings forth in this spring. But we've not seen anything. And certainly if this were going to be the case, this is things that should have been put in place long before Roe was reversed.
She's right.
And it hasn't been.
She's right.
The last thing I want to ask you about is, this is for a Canadian audience. You've got Canadians watching here. What do you think Canadians should be thinking about in this moment as this anniversary comes and goes and sort of the state of rights in America?
Don't assume it can't happen elsewhere.
She's right.
Be very careful. Be vigilant. Prepare.
Yep.
I feel like we weren't necessarily caught off guard, but we did not take the threat of the reversal of Roe seriously enough. So just be prepared and make sure, your elected officials understand how important abortion care is. Reproductive health is so important, and don't let them forget.
Ms. Pittman, thank you very much for your time today.
She was right.
Right now, it feels like there's this war against workers. And the Liberals are using the Bank of Canada to blame people's wages for inflation. Wages aren't even keeping up with inflation.
He's right.
People are doing everything right, but still falling behind.
Wages have been stagnant for a very long time.
Unlike their paychecks, they see big corporations' profits going up twice as fast as inflation.
Yeah, they've been making record-breaking profits ever since, what was it, like 2004 or something like that? 2006?
That's greedflation.
Year after year.
And of course, Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre won't say a word about multi-billion-dollar companies raking in massive profits. Their billionaire CEO friends are making record profits.
Yep.
Loblaws alone has profits that have increased by 29%.
Mm-hmm.
Grocery chains, the corporate chains across this country, are raking in millions in extra windfall profits every week by charging Canadians $40 for a pack of chicken.
Yep.
They're using inflation
We did talk about that not too terribly long ago.
as cover to pad their profits. And it's not just groceries. It's everything we buy.
And one thing to keep in mind when you are saying that, like if you say that, you know, the inflation is just on Justin Trudeau or whoever, know that you are buying into the propaganda that the wealthy elite wants you to buy into, because then they can shift blame, or they won't face any repercussions because they're shifting blame away from them in order to you know, yeah, you're just shifting blame away from them so that they don't have to like actually do something about it, right? Shifting blame to the Liberals, which the Liberals do have some blame here to go to have for sure, but most of it comes from the price gouging of corporations. And shifting blame away from them isn't going to solve the problem.
It's our mortgage, rent, cell phone bills. Last month, when we proposed the idea of, again, putting a windfall tax on the wealthiest corporations profiting off the backs of people, he dismissed the idea as simply too simplistic. A windfall tax that could be used as a disincentive to get...
I mean, it's the bare minimum that we should be doing, because other places in Europe have a windfall tax and it's beneficial to them.
Gouge shoppers.
It's the bare minimum.
Too simplistic, can't do it. Seriously? Other governments across the world have stood up to corporate greed with a windfall tax, including the United Kingdom, even under a conservative government.
True.
Because it works. The truth is, Justin Trudeau doesn't want a windfall tax or penalties for gouging consumers or even proper competition laws. He's never going to make them pay what they owe. And he's never going to stop big corporations from making billions of dollars exploiting and off the backs of workers. We learned this week that one of the firms in Justin Trudeau's inner circle, McKinsey & Company, has been handed $101 million by the Trudeau government. $101 million that could have put over 1,000 more nurses on the front lines for a year. And we all know that government after government has pulled the same nonsense. When conservatives are in power, they give their insiders contracts. When the Liberals are in power, their friends get contracts.
Yep.
The Prime Minister's inner circle includes corporations like McKinsey and the Loblaws empire, and it shows.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is, every victory for real Canadians.
He's right.
Dental care, anti-scab legislation, bigger GST rebates. These were things that Liberals and Conservatives fought against until the NDP forced Mr. Trudeau to do the right thing. go without saying, but of course, Pierre Poilievre is not the answer. Just last week.
I love it when people think that like Pierre Poilievre is like gonna be the savior of Canada and like tackle like a lot of these issues. When like I had conversations with family on this weekend about that, and I'm like, no, the only thing that he provides, the only things that Millhouse provides is a slogan. Like, if he actually provides like a solution, then tell me what his solution is. I'm waiting to hear a solution. And like, they couldn't actually tell you what his solution was outside of like just inflation. Like, it's so stupid.
I mean, if you needed any more evidence. He went to Winnipeg to spend time with health privatization pushers, the Frontier Center. And promoting for-profit healthcare isn't all that the Frontier Center does.
Yep.
Sadly and pretty seriously, they have denied that residential schools hurt children.
Yep.
They deny that climate crisis is human-made.
Yep.
And Pierre Poilievre chose that group in particular to go to and to speak in front of. Pierre Poilievre plans to cut your pension and your social safety net. And who benefits from that? Who benefits from cutting
corporations
CPP in EI? Not you, not workers. Rich CEOs and their companies will take in more than $500 million away from your pensions and add it to their profits instead.
Yep.
More bonuses for the very biggest bosses. He's here for them. He will cut what you need in order to give them what they want. From your pension to your health care. We envision a Canada where healthcare is ready for you when...
Like, at this point, like... I know that they're all dog shit, like, to some degree. I think that the NDP is probably, like, the best option. Like, the NDP, like, hasn't held any position of federal power, and, like, at this point, like, what's the fucking worst that could happen, right? Like, we've already seen, like, the fucking weird and lame candidates that the conservatives have been putting up ever since Harper lost to Trudeau. And like Trudeau, like the only thing he has going for him is his fucking looks. Like, at this point, like, what's the most that we can fucking lose by electing the NDP? Like, at this point, I just think we should let them, just give them a chance, right?
And where you need it, where nurses and doctors and frontline healthcare workers are respected, and there's enough of them so you don't have to wait.
Okay, so rent. Let's talk about rent.
In Toronto is absolutely insane.
Well, I just found
I think it was like, I think rent, like, for like the average person, or like the average wage in Toronto, I believe it was, you had to pay for rent was 123%, I want to say.
my rent's going to be increased from $2,100 a month to $2,400 a month for a one-bedroom condo in Toronto.
When it comes to rent in Toronto, social media doesn't lie.
If you're in Toronto, you can get this room for $800. There's no curtains, no privacy. It's an open room, which is a den. There's no window, no door. What the hell is going on?
What is this
$800 for that? Bro!
city? What is this city?
The average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Toronto right now is $2,481. That's 20% higher than the year before. And
Yep.
we're not talking about big places. We're talking about around 500 square feet. So that likely means a small kitchen, small living room, small bedroom, not much space for almost $2,500.
Yep.
So is there a fix for this? And how did it even get so bad?
Yes. Honestly, like, at this point, literally just doing what Mao said. Like, honestly, at this point, why the fuck not? Like, it's just so infuriating because like these parasites are just sucking. Like, okay, so I work with a fairly conservative coworker who I actually get along with fairly well, right? And he actually put it in a very good way when it comes to rent. He's like, why should I have to pay for someone else's mortgage? I'm like, yeah, that's a very, very good that's a very good analogy. Like, why should you, right? You know, I think that you know, if you want, you should be able to own your house, or, you know, if you want to have like a cottage somewhere, whatever, go for it. I don't care. Like, the problem that I have is when people start charging other people to live and pay off their mortgage or whatever. Like, it's idiotic. Like, I believe that we should, you know, have universal housing and everything, and fuck the NIMBYs. Like, I don't give a shit about your property value. That's the whole, like, the whole point of, like, an alleged free market is, like, if you make a bad decision, well, too bad, you've already made your decision. That's just the game you play, you know. You take risks, and sometimes those risks don't work out for you.
One factor, those rising interest rates. They mean people aren't buying houses right now. So that means more renters, more competition, more demand. Two, people just aren't getting paid enough. Incomes are not keeping up with the rising cost of living. And three, people who study this say that not enough of the right kind of housing, affordable rental units, is being built.
Yeah, and instead we're too busy focusing on like building these fucking mega mansions that no one's gonna live in, that they're gonna remain vacant and increase the property value of other other fucking places, right? Like, it's just so stupid.
This is unprecedented in Toronto history. This spike, the rapidity with which rents have gone up, is really unusual.
We caught up with Karen Chappell from the University of Toronto, one of North America's leading experts on urban planning.
Well, the big surprise right now is that this is hitting the middle class. That for the first time, we're really seeing folks at median income or 120% of median income not being able to enter the rental market.
Yep.
Here's why. The general...
And like, here's the thing. Oh, just get a roommate. Well, guess what? Roommates fucking suck. Like, I'm sorry. I've only had, like, I have had roommates, right? And I've only had like one actual roommate that I've actually liked. Like, roommates just fucking suck. I'm sorry, but like, when it comes down to things, you know, people should be able to afford like their own place, whether it's an apartment or a house or whatever, without having to live with a roommate. Like, and like in some instances, like the area isn't even that big for two people, for like 2+ people.
Rule is that you should only spend 30% of your pre-tax income on rent.
True.
So for that average one-bedroom apartment at about $2,500, that means you have to be making $100,000 a year.
It is overwhelming. It's hard not to get disheartened about it.
And it's infuriating too.
Thank you. People are coming in with like really high expectations, and then as they see the options in the market, they're realizing, okay, I have to be more realistic.
Realtor Paula Resnick says Toronto's rental market is like a roller coaster, at times an emotional one.
So when you have a client who says to you, I want this, and this is my budget, and you have to say, not so fast, you're not going to be able to afford that here. What are those conversations like? Just definitely like very frustrated. I remember I had a call with someone recently.
Yeah, like nowadays, like, you're honestly lucky if you get fucking utilities. Like, it's so stupid. Like, again, going back to my one coworker, he said that if he was ever to rent and utilities were not added to that price, like, he wouldn't even consider it, right? And rightfully so. Like, no, you should 100% get utilities. Like, it's just getting to the point where, like, we need like a Mao style figure Like, honestly.
Like, I can't believe this. Paula shows us a listing for a small one-bedroom. In 2019, it was $2,200 a month. Now $2,400 for 499 square feet. And what if someone wanted a bigger place to perhaps start a family, for example?
Like an
Good
example
luck.
of a two-bedroom
Good
in the
luck.
same area in the core will be like starting at $2,950 and it'll go up to like $3,200.
Wow, that's expensive.
And that's like a pretty like not luxury building, like pretty average building.
Do you see people just completely throwing up their hands and saying like, I can't live in this city, it's crazy?
Yeah, no, 100%. The pool of people that can afford a one bedroom for rent in Toronto is quite small.
And this isn't just a Toronto problem. Average rents across Canada are now more than $2,000 a month.
The average rent in Canada is $2,000 a month. Manitoba and I believe Saskatchewan and New Brunswick aren't terrible when it comes to rent, but generally speaking, everywhere is shit.
For the first time ever. In Vancouver, the average rent for a one bed
Oh, yeah. In Vancouver. Oh my god. Especially if you're in Victoria. Oh god, the rent in Victoria is insane. Good luck trying to live in Victoria.
$2,633 a month. In Calgary, it's $1,710, and in Atlanta, Canada, that number is $1,716.
This rental market is like absolutely insane.
What the hell is this? $1,750 for a room, not the entire apartment, just for a room.
And so what are some of the fixes for this?
Rent control.
I think we need the renovation
Rent control, increase in public spending for housing or universal housing, and getting rid of parasitic landlords, so pretty much all of them.
Revolution. I think we need to make it super easy to convert our single-family houses. We have a lot of them, even in the downtown Toronto area. We need to be able to convert those quickly to triplexes, fourplexes, and make rental units.
Unfortunately, that won't happen.
Ontario plans to build 1.5 million new homes over the next 10 years, including 285,000 in Toronto.
I wonder how many of these homes are gonna stay vacant and just increase in value or for the property owners. I wonder. I'm kind of curious about that.
We want to return the dream of home ownership to the next generation of Ontarians.
No, you don't, you
Toronto's
liar.
Mayor John Tory says the city needs more, so he's increased the city's housing budget to create more multi-tenant housing and more supply.
We've made good progress in the last 8 years.
It's not going to solve anything.
Needs to be done.
And the need to make this better is growing every day.
I mean, at the U of T, we have new assistant professors who can't afford rental housing in Toronto on their university salary. That is a huge problem, and let alone the firefighters, the school.
Yeah, like people who have like 3 times as many degrees coming out of out of university compared to, like, say Gen X or boomers or whatever, aren't able to actually, like, with the wage that they're getting paid or salary, aren't actually able to, like, afford the basic necessities of life, which is kind of insane to me.
School teachers.
What kind of impact does that have on a city?
It really means that a city like Toronto is becoming more and more exclusive. And it means that we'll lose that wonderful diversity, the multicultural aura of Toronto, which is so unique, which really gives it its identity. That's all at risk now.
All right. And with that, I guess we'll end it there. Yeah, tomorrow will probably be more 3 houses, so that's gonna be fun. I'm playing 2 Fire Emblem games at once, so that's always cool. Yeah, until next time, I guess I'll see everyone later.